Warner Brothers Studio, 1937. To the list of young contract players has been added the name of 26-year-old Ronald Reagan. The one-time radio announcer from Dixon, Illinois, had been signed to a 7-year contract at $200 a week. He went to work for the B unit at the studio, the low-budget productions. In his first movie, Love Is on the Air, Reagan played a radio announcer.
And remember this, ladies and gentlemen, in these United States, a man is always innocent until he is legally proven guilty.
I was in some of those pictures that the studio didn't want them good. It wanted them Thursday. And, yes, there's one picture that I've made and one picture that Nancy made of her own. Each of us. And we have never seen those pictures. There's one I wouldn't get trapped into looking at that thing. I know how bad it is.
But bad eventually turned to good, as in the role of George Gipp in Warner's classic Newt Rockne. This 1940 movie about Notre Dame's legendary football coach starred Pat O'Brien and provided Reagan with one of his most memorable screen moments.
Ask them to go in there with all they've got. Win just one for the Gipper.
Meanwhile, his personal life had taken a major turn with his marriage to actress Jane Wyman, whom he met while filming Brother Rat.
Just something I forgot to do in the rose garden.
Jane Wyman would never share that other, better-known rose garden because after 8 years of marriage and 2 children, the pair were divorced in 1948. But I'm getting ahead of my story. In 1942, there was King's Row, a Gothic tale touching on madness and sadism. It provided Reagan with his other famous movie line, later to become the title of his autobiography.
Randy! Where's the rest of me? It was that accident.
The finest movie I was ever in was King's Row. And I think it was the finest part I ever had. And I get a kind of naughty pleasure out of the fact that when it first came out, the critics panned it unmercifully. And today it is very often included as one of the 10 best pictures of all time.
When King's Row opened, America had already gone to war, and so had Ronald Reagan.
All right, men, you know who's going to be out in front tonight? Our boss, the President of the United States.
American Eagle, America sings of her wings in the sky.
Although he served in the Army Air Corps, because of poor eyesight and deferments, war for Reagan was in Hollywood as part of the Air Corps Motion Picture Unit. Situated at the Hal Roach Studios, known affectionately as Fort Roach, Reagan held a variety of jobs, including narrating or appearing in the propaganda films. On September 10th, 1945, Captain Ronald Reagan was discharged from the United States Air Corps. He was 34 years old. Within a year, he was back before the cameras in movies like That Hagen Girl.
Isn't that? It most certainly is.
But events off-screen were about to take charge of his life. Hollywood was at war with itself. It was a labor war that had begun in early 1945 and really did not end for 4 years. It occasionally turned ugly. As an actor, Ronald Reagan joined SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, in 1937, later to become a member of its board. He was, in those years, a liberal Democrat. After he became SAG president in 1947, labor unrest and fear of communist influence occupied more and more of his time, and slowly began to separate him from Hollywood's left wing. He was often called fascist, but he kept the actors working. In October of 1947, Reagan, along with actors Robert Montgomery and George Murphy, later to be a United States Senator, appeared before HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee.
I will be frank with you that as a citizen, I would hesitate, or I would not like to see any political party outlawed on the basis of its political ideology.
While he was later to change his mind and ask that the Communist Party in this country be outlawed, journalist Quentin Reynolds noted that Reagan stole the show at HUAC because it was obvious he had done a great deal of thinking on the subject in question. While active politically in his union, Reagan's income was still derived from acting. He was a crusading DA in 1951's Storm Warning, a story that dealt with the Ku Klux Klan.
It'll take more than these sheets you're wearing to hide the fact that you're mean, frightened little people, or you wouldn't be here, desecrating the cross.
Well, Bonzo, never did thank you for saving my life this morning, did I?
That same year, there was the now legendary Bedtime for Bonzo. Comedians and politicians made Reagan the butt of jokes about this film. But as one reviewer said, it's really a cute, harmless little comedy about a professor who treats a chimp as his child for a hereditary experiment. Then, in 1952, the movie titled The Winning Team. Doris Day was Reagan's co-star in a true-life baseball biography.
Without you, I'm just half a man waiting to black out.
That same year was the beginning of another winning team, and this actress' name was Nancy Davis. They had met in 1949 when she sought his help as guild president when her name was mistakenly placed on a list of Hollywood communists. In 1952, she became Mrs. Ronald Reagan. It was about this time he hit a real professional low, performing in Las Vegas, singing and dancing. It was mercifully short-lived. He was rescued by corporate America in what turned out to be a life-changing career move.
For General Electric, here is Ronald Reagan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Reagan had become the host of the General Electric Theater, and in addition to acting on the show, he and the family helped sell electricity.
Tell you what, Patty, let's play a game. Let's see how many electric appliances we can find around the house.
Reagan also became GE's traveling spokesman. It gave him his initial first-hand contact with an America that would later call him the Great Communicator. Reagan's movie career was by now terminal. Still, an occasional film provided income, and in one instance, in 1957's Hellcats of the Navy, the only big-screen pairing of Ronald and Nancy Reagan.
I wanted to be sure this time, so we played it safe. Until I knew that you were Mr. Right.
Well, I can change that in a hurry.
Ironically, Reagan's last movie role in 1964 was totally out of character. It was The Killers, in which he played a corporate crime boss. He got good reviews in this made-for-TV movie, but it was deemed too violent and released theatrically. The following year, 1965, he was host of TV's Death Valley Days. It brought Ronald Reagan's Hollywood career to an end. Already re-registered as a Republican conservative, the next year, he became governor of California. Ronald Reagan made 53 movies between 1937 and 1964, and his life before elective office is the most visible of any American president. Hollywood, on screen and off, was his crucible, and those who dismissed him as merely an actor failed to understand that the movies for him were more than a mirror on society. They were a platform on which he developed an extraordinary political talent. For today, Jim Brown, NBC News, Hollywood.